Hello everybody, you're listening to The Arch on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review, and we play local unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Arch Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We'll repeat on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on iTunes, Spotify, the Wickham Sound Listen Again. Anywhere else you get your podcast, please do leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. And you can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. So this week we are having a highlight show, but before we jump into the highlights, we're going to go over to the Rhylight Zone. And for this week's entry into the Rhylight Zone, we're going to be continuing with part 2 of Fat by myself, Dane Cobain. This is a short story from a collection of mine called Scarlet Sins. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Part 2 of Fat. But on that first night he ate it, and he continued to follow the doctor's plan the following day when his wife was at work, busting her metaphorical balls to earn enough money to put food on the table in the first place. Lucy was at school, and so the house was empty. Luckily they'd been thoughtful enough to place a blender on his bedside table, along with a colourful assortment of fruits and vegetables, from apples and pears to spinach and kale, as well as grains and legumes like quinoa and soybeans. Mike thought it looked like an explosion in a hipster's pantry, but he tried his best to devour it. At first he did just what the doctor ordered, blending the ingredients together and drinking the resultant goop. It came out thick with little chunks in it, no matter how hard he revved up the blender. It needed a little water, but Mike only had a 2-litre bottle to keep him going until the family got home, and he'd learned early on how important it was not to waste it. He tried the blender again without much success, before resorting to shoveling raw spinach into his mouth by the handful. Later that night his wife cooked up a treat. Sweet potato salad, his daily allowance of carbohydrates, on a bed of rocket, along with homemade lemon sorbet, sugar-free of course, for dessert. It cleansed his palate, but it didn't chase away the gnawing hunger he felt, like a wild animal that was trapped beneath his ribcage. He cried himself to sleep that night, and then slept so soundly that he didn't hear Jane and Lucy on the school run. The only thing that kept him going the following day was the fact that it was Friday. He spent the morning staring mournfully at the blender, and he spent the afternoon staring mournfully at the fruit. At around 1:25 p.m, he picked up a plum and threw it at the wall. It exploded and its remnants went skittering across the living room, where Cookie, the family cat, tried to gobble it up. He choked on it and spat it back out, then cast a desultory look at Mike, who was lying on his bed like a beach whale or an elephant with a spear in its side. "Rather you than me, buddy," he mumbled. When Jane got home, he played the last card left to him, the sympathy card. "I'm starving here, Jane," he'd said. "Don't you see? What the hell will it take for you to understand that you're killing me with it?" Here, he'd pointed at the bowl of fresh fruit and vegetables that she'd tried to poison him with. "Don't you want to lose weight?" she'd replied. "Don't you want to stick around to watch your daughter grow up? To see her first school play? To scare the hell out of whoever's unlucky enough to pick her up on prom night? To wave her off when she goes to university?" But Mike was having none of it. "I can't eat this," he whined. "Please, I'll try again after the weekend, I promise. You're right, you're always right. I can't keep on living like this, but it's Friday night. I'm starving and I need something to eat. One proper meal won't kill me, but it might just keep me alive." And so she'd relented, and she'd picked up a little pork and made him a kebab to go with the chips she'd grabbed with a Mr. Cod loyalty card. The old man in the chip shop had grinned his toothless grin at her and then asked her how Mike's diet was going. "Fine, thanks," she'd said abruptly. She bought him an extra pickled egg just to prove a point. Mike ate well that evening, and he slept badly that night. He had a weird dream about someone watching him sleep. When he woke up, he felt too self-conscious to go to sleep again. It was at times like this that he wished he still shared a bed with his wife. If anyone could scare the nightmares away, she could. Mike tried again on Monday, but the truth was, he just loved meat. Maybe not the kind of pork that was sold from a family butcher though. Mike liked the gizzards in KFC bargain buckets, the deep fried whatever it was in chicken nuggets. He tried and he tried and he tried, but he caved by Tuesday morning, and by Wednesday he was back to his old bad habits. Dr. Kufieta paid him another visit the following week. He didn't look happy. This time he spoke to Jane while Mike was in the room, watching him passively whilst his future was decided for him. "It simply can't go on like this," Dr. Kufieta explained. "Alas, it seems that your husband has already made up his mind, and I have to respect that decision. It's the wrong decision, but it's a decision." Mike Walker grunted, and Dr. Kufieta took that as his sign to leave. "I never forget a patient," he said, "and I'll never forget you either, Mr. Walker." Jane led the young doctor outside and shook his hand one last time before he climbed behind the wheel of his Peugeot. "Please, Dr. Kufieta," she begged, "don't give up. I'm tired of people giving up on us. I'm tired of Mike giving up. Please tell me that you'll get us out of this mess." Dr. Kufieta looked at her, and he looked away again just as quickly. "I'll do what I can," he said. And then he was gone, just like that. That night, Mike Walker slept terribly. He'd had that dream again, that god-awful dream that just kept on coming, that dream where someone, or something, was watching him. He drowned his sorrows in sugar-free Coca-Cola. Dr. Kufieta didn't come again, and Mike and Jane quickly fell back into their old bad habits. The dreams got worse and worse. At first it was just a fragment of an illusion that he thought he'd thought. Then it became a living nightmare, something he could never escape no matter how much his wasted body wanted him to. It was always the same dream, and it was always something alien, a strange face he'd never seen before, something lucid and rancid, something so terrible that he wondered what the hell it was supposed to be in the first place. All of Mike's dreams were the same. They revolved around the same disturbing premise, where some unidentified alien broke unashamedly into his room and started staring at him until he caved and started screaming. The alien had a green face and green skin, green legs and green arms, as well as green appendages which slobbered green slime. It also had massive legs and an enormous brain, and it was ready to kick ass with its sharp teeth and devastating claws. And worst of all was the way it just stood there and looked at him, like it was sizing him up and figuring out which part of him would be the tastiest. For a humongous extraterrestrial life form, Mike made the perfect meal. Sure, the meat was a little fat heavy, but Mike's bloated organs would be considered quite the delicacy on Altair 4, wherever the hell that was. It wasn't until the 6th night in a row that Mike realised he wasn't dreaming. He realised this because he himself, and the warm seeping liquid failed to wake him up. He paused for a second, deep in stunned thought, and then the realisation hit him and he screamed the kind of primal scream that chills bones and sets off nearby dogs and car alarms. A light clicked on somewhere, and Mike blinked and rubbed the crust from his eyes. When he moved his head away again, his nocturnal visitor was nowhere to be seen. 30 seconds later, the light clicked on in Mike's bedroom and Jane came barreling through the doorway. "What is it, sweetheart?" she asked, dampening a cloth and using it to mop sweat from Mike's glistening brow. "I saw something," Mike muttered hoarsely. "Something green and evil with big teeth and weird tentacles. It was watching me." "Oh, honey, it was just a dream. Try to go back to sleep. You'll feel better in the morning." Mike continued to protest, but it was 3:17 in the morning and his wife was having none of it. "Stop being stupid," Jane told him. "Aliens don't exist, and even if they did, I think they'd have better things to do than watch you sleep." But nothing, Mike. I'm going back to bed. Some of us have to work in the morning." Mike didn't get much sleep that night, but the strange apparition stayed away. He was relieved when the sun finally rose and cast its first rays of light over the horizon and into the dusty room that he'd been trapped inside for the last 5 years. After the night of drama, he didn't feel much like eating. For the first time in a long time, Mike had lost his appetite. He slept a little throughout the day and tried to make it up to his wife that evening by eating the steamed vegetables that she prepared for him. After all, he reasoned, perhaps it was something that he'd been eating. He'd heard that cheese could cause vivid dreams, but the green demon he'd seen took it to a whole new level. So he promised himself he'd try to stick to the healthy stuff. But that night, the visitor was back again, and Mike was left with a sense of déjà vu. He called for his wife. She came barreling into the room like a runaway train, and this time Mike kept his tired eyes open for long enough to watch the alien climb out of his bedroom window. It was just a short drop from his ground floor hovel to the rose garden outside. When Jane refused to listen to her husband's impassioned plea for her to protect him, he tried a different tack. "Go out and check for footprints then," he whined. "If you don't believe me, go and see for yourself." Jane grumbled reluctantly, but she did what her husband asked of her. She was gone for nearly 10 minutes, and Mike could tell that she was looking around out there by the way that the beam of her flashlight swept around outside the window, casting strange shadows inside the room. "There's nothing there," she told him, when she wandered back inside with her dressing gown wrapped tightly around her shoulders. "Go back to sleep, I've had enough of this nonsense." The following night, the visitor returned. When Mike called for his wife, she didn't come to him, but he was sure as hell that she'd heard him. He shouted until his throat was hoarse, but the weird being just continued to watch him impassively. Eventually, Mike gave in to sheer exhaustion and fell asleep. When he woke up, the visitor was gone. Life continued. Over the next 6 months, the pattern repeated itself. Mike was eating better but sleeping badly, and every night the unwelcome guest appeared in his room as if by magic. Mike never saw him arrive, and he never saw him leave again, but sometimes he felt a chill in the air and he assumed, correctly, that it was his window sliding open and closed. Every night he called for his wife, and every night she ignored him. He tried the police, but they ignored him. He tried a priest, but she ignored him. He tried a wide range of independent experts on alien abductions, but they fobbed him off with excuses or tried to charge him exorbitant hourly rates for video consultations. One night, he tried his daughter, but she ignored him too. "I'm scared, Daddy," she said. "Mummy says you've gone crazy." "Your mother said that?" "She says you're just telling stories and that the men in white coats are going to take you away." "It's not the men in white coats I'm worried about," Mike said. "You have to believe me, sweetheart." But Lucy didn't believe him, and she started to cry. Then she scuttled away to climb into bed with her mother, who wasn't too pleased to be woken up in the middle of the night by her snotty-nosed daughter, who was supposed to be sound asleep in her own bed. It was, after all, a school night, and Jane could tell by the fuzzy quality of the half-light that dawn was on its way. That was part 2 of Fat by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Straight 8 with Nothing But a Woman.
okay inside. Sometimes surviving is
that was Reboot by Humans Can't Reboot, and before that we had Nothing But a Woman by Straight 8. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this week we are having a highlight show, so we're going to start by catching up with Drumojo Mike Watson. And, you know, you mentioned your involvement with Lane End Players. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like how long you've been kind of a member of the Players, and let us know a little bit about what their summer shows are that they've got coming up.
Yeah, I mean, they're an well-established group. I mean, I live in Lane End, so it made sense to get involved. But I was really involved just because I was a drummer and I knew one of the actors who I was in a band with in the 70s. Let's not go there. So the band called the Boff Band came out of the Lane End Players. We did a one-off fundraising do 30 years ago, and we're still going, which is great. But the Lane End Players do 4 productions a year. They do a panto in January, autumn, summer, and spring, and they could be comedy, it could be serious, drama, it's great fun to be involved. I've tried to sort of think about the legacy of the musical and all the work that local drama groups do. So I've created this sort of sub-brand, if you like, called It's Showtime. And the idea of that is, local groups can come together and share their skills and talents with people who are interested in careers or having a new hobby around everything to do with drama, music, technical, creative, and hopefully something that could be left as a legacy for the Arts Centre to use, because I want the musical passionately to raise money for the Arts Centre.
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, you mentioned the Arts Centre and you were kind of instrumental in setting that up. And can you just tell us, I guess, about your involvement with Wickham Arts Centre throughout the years?
Yeah, it all started really when in 2004, and I had a proper job and high pressure sort of stuff. But I was thinking of ways to sort of communicate, to contribute, and I found out about Wickham Community Arts Network because there was an arts centre called Spring Gardens, which was shut down in 1999. And there's an organisation formed to try and get the money from the council because it was ring fence money called Section 106. And the council weren't very sort of, let's put it, quick to give us the money back to buy a new centre. But we had to persuade them that we needed an art centre back. And it took 10 years of hard graft to get that art centre back. Eventually, we persuaded them to buy the Old St John's Church. No. We'll buy the building, but you have to set up a charity to run it. So it was be careful what you wish for, because obviously we had to do that, set it up. But to be honest, it's been fantastic. We've been going since 2010 when we first had the keys, it goes from strength to strength every year. So I'd stepped down from my role as chair, which I've been in for many years, really because I was exhausted. I've done a lot of work since 2004 on the whole project, and I really wanted to focus on my art, which is my music and my creativity. And I thought that there was a chance to do that.
That was a highlight of our chat with Mike Watson, and we're going to head over now to when we chat to local poet Joe Campling. Well, the first question, and I think you'll have a good answer for this one. Sometimes it goes somewhere, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a great one to ask writers, and it's a traditional opening question for me. So it's, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
My son-in-law, he wrote a book called Consistent Creative Content, which is on Kindle. His name's Lee Hall. And it's what it was is he's obviously, as I think we've spoken a long while ago, that he obviously just writes books, but obviously how he gets himself out there. And so again, at the time it was a download on Kindle, and I gave him he got a few pence from me for downloading, and it was actually it was downloaded by a lot. And obviously, whilst it was interesting because it's like, you sort of know what you should be doing, but when you get somebody somebody telling you what you should be, how you should be advertising yourself, and how they've done it, and what worked, what didn't, you think, yeah, but why didn't I think of that in the first place? It's all fairly common sense, obviously with a bit of know-how. It's really quite, it's quite, and in fact, luckily his book, this seemed to do quite well, I'm very pleased to say. Right, so that's what it was called.
Awesome. Well, and I suppose with a book like that, the fact that the book itself is doing quite well kind of shows you that he knows what he's talking about, It's a bit like you wouldn't want to read a book on, writing advice from an author you'd never heard of, as opposed to maybe, again, something like Stephen King's on writing. It's like, well, fair enough, he knows what he's talking about.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah, I mean, again, he makes reference to that, the fact he read that book, and
Yeah.
How he started writing, and then how he got. This is my son-in-law Lee. How he started writing, but then obviously it's fine that you think, oh gosh, so, and then how do I get myself out there? I put this stuff together, and I've got someone to publish it, but how the heck do people, how the heck do people want to read this stuff? How do I make it interesting? So it was very interesting to see his journey that way.
That was a highlight of our chat with local poet Joe Campling, and here we are in conversation with musician Chris Blackwell. Who are some of the bands who are going to perform this year?
Okay, would you like a rundown in no particular order?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so on the Saturday, we have all wonderful people. We have John Napier, we have Leslie Jane, we have the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, we have Dan Brennan, we have Nick Atkinson, the Phenomenauts, Radio Generation, and Bolo Bolo. And on the Sunday, we have Laura Williams, we have Yvng and Jethro, we have Flambe Hombres, we have a band called The Ilk. Now, I wonder why you have a vested interest in this one, Dane. We have the Bozza Band with the brilliant Bob Newell. We have Matt Love from Element doing an acoustic set, and I'm apparently supposed to be doing a few songs as well, if I can figure out some family-friendly ones that I can pluck out of the repertoire. So there we go. We've got 2 days packed full of live music. That's acoustic performers and bands together. So acoustic during the day, bands towards the evening, just to round things off. And if it's anything like last year, I think it's going to be a brilliant weekend.
What are some of the go-to songs that you like to perform?
Well, I'll be honest with you. A lot of the stuff that I tend to get asked for at the moment is things that you can't really play on your show, because I've always liked doing songs that other people don't do, because I feel that because other people do them, there's no point in me doing them.
Yeah.
Because you can always hear someone else do them, and that's fine, and they'll probably do it 10 times better than I would. So I like to try and get some of the more obscure songs in. I like doing Goldie Looking Chain, or Used to Be the Gentleman Rhymer, a few Mitch Benn songs. If I had to go for maybe more mainstream, I might do some sort of Pet Shop Boys, Robbie Williams kind of things, maybe a bit of Stereophonics. But it's kind of standard fare for a lot of the open mics, really. But it's familiar, and people like familiar, and familiar makes people feel comfortable, and that's what you want, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably for a full list of the songs that I do, just have a listen to the lyrics of Dave's open mic song, and that's probably the majority of the ones that I do.
That was a highlight of our chat with musician Chris Blackwell, and this is part of what we talked to Gloria Mcneely, the horror author, about. Okay, so something else I wanted to ask you about is, so you offer beta reading, and I wondered if you could explain what beta reading is and why should people hire you to do it?
Yes, this is something I just recently got into, but it's working out really well for me. So the beta reading that I offer, or beta reading in general, is just having someone give a second set of eyes to your story or your novel, and to tell you, it can be either specific questions from the writer or just a general idea of what works within the story, what doesn't work, if there's information missing, or if there are scenes that are dragging the pace down, slowing everything down. Just give general advice like that. I think what sets me a little bit apart is that I'm also a writer, so I'm not just looking at it from a reader's perspective of enjoying the story, but I can also give sort of concrete directions, at least, on how to fix certain things, especially if the writer themselves says that they struggle with dialogue or they struggle with action scenes. I can give pointers on how they can possibly improve those, or bring up the pacing, or include a character, or get rid of a character that isn't serving the story in any way. So I've gotten a lot of good feedback so far. from people who find it really valuable, and it's something I really enjoy doing as well. So it was a good find for me. I had no idea that it was a thing that I could possibly do and actually get paid for, but now I'm like really happy with it. So
that was a highlight of our chat with Gloria Mcneely, and here we are chatting to So Long Space Girl. And what does the recording process look like to you guys? And has it changed since you recorded that first album?
Okay, so we started doing our own demos, just using our own equipment. We have a Tascam that we took into the studio, and we would record various parts. And then once we were sort of ready to do it professionally, we got in contact with so as I said before, we got in contact with John Mitchell, who he does I think he currently does Architects, or he at very least used to. You know, he's done Enter Shikari, Yumi at 6, all those kind of bands. I heard about him through a friend, and he's done a lot of bands that I really quite like as well. You know, like Tigress and I'm struggling to name any at the moment. But yeah, the point being that we kind of so we drive down to his studio in Reading, and the first time we did it was a little bit uneconomical. We drove down every day, and you know, it went fairly smoothly. Like, you know, we set up the drum kit, we record all the drum parts, we play it all as a band, and then once the drums are done, we sort of retrack guitars, bass, then we set up the vocals and do those. It's a really smooth process, and we get 5 songs done in about 6 or 7 days. And then when we did the second album, it was actually Rob's idea to say we're just going to stay down in Reading for like the time that we're there, which actually was really good because it
became a family unit.
Yeah, and we had to live together, and that was good. That was quite fun actually. But we also weren't doing that drive every day.
Well, I mean, you know, because when you're recording, it's a long day, really long day, and having to drive home after is it's exhausting. So it took the stress out of it for the most part. Just being down there, really.
Yeah, we could relax afterwards. We could go and have a drink and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, not doing 10, 12-hour days when you include the drive, which was nice.
That was a highlight of our chat with So Long Space Girl. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is John C. Buttygeg with Breeze. That was Breeze by John C. Buttigieg. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And this week we are having a highlights show. So we're going to head right over now and catch up with part of our highlights when we chatted to musician Nick Coleman. And so you kind of, I guess, hinted at it. So at what point did you start creating your own music? How long had you been playing by that point?
So I started creating my own music. We bought a Tascam 8-track analog system, and that would have been 2006, I think. I had written a few songs when I was 16 with the guitar. I think I've still got them in a folder somewhere. So I guess in that respect, we did sort of knock about, messing around, trying to write some songs. But in earnest, started playing with the 8-track in 2006. We were in a band, but sort of pop punk affair, and we started knocking our own tunes out, and that was great fun, super addictive.
Cool. And what was that band, and sort of what was the story there?
This band was called The Underdogs. So I had played at the age of 18 as a drummer in a band, covers band, and it used to actually make our own music then, but we never really recorded anything. The mainstay of that is probably my mate Chris Broom, who's always from the age of 14. We played guitar together, and then we decided to we were playing with a bunch of older guys, 20 years our senior, and we decided to start writing and create a band of our own age around our peers, with our own sort of influences, and doing what we wanted to do, as it were.
Yeah. Cool. And you mentioned that you played the drums as well, so I did want to ask, like, what other instruments do you play?
So yeah, I can play the drums, a bass player. So I moved from the drums to the bass guitar because we couldn't find a bass player. So I said, well, I'll play the bass. And we had a drummer, and we were a three-piece for 3 years. I think we were a three-piece, and then we got a second guitarist in. And that was great fun. We recorded a single, done a small tour of the UK, and that was great fun out in the van. And that was about it, really. And then we sort of we just stuck to playing the pubs in the local area, really. Yeah.
Cool. And so when you sit down to write a song, what does that look like to you? Do you start with lyrics? Do you start with, the music, or does it depend?
In this day and age, it depends. When I first started, it was very much music first. Riff based, groove based first, and then the lyrics will come afterwards, which is still very much the case now. I will noodle on my guitar, find something I like, and then the sort of lyrics come afterwards. But even, I would say, from a young age, from 17, 18, I was always scribbling in a notebook.
Yeah.
And so I've got notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of it still. And I still do it now. I log it one place or another. And sometimes then when you're playing a song, or you've got something going on, a progression, and you sort of know what you're looking for, and you can go through the books, and then it will jump out. Yeah, that's the words we're looking for.
Yeah.
And there has been the occasional songs, you know yourself, as a songwriter, sometimes you sit down with a guitar and things come from nowhere. A whole lot, which is they're the great ones. It's 20 minutes later, you've got a song. I think, well,
yeah,
like that,
That was a highlight of our chat with Nick Coleman, and we're going to go head over now and chat to local musician Yvng. So, and you mentioned, I think I read on your website somewhere, talking about going back to the album Definitely Tea. You talked about, like, the different, there are different kinds of teas. People drink their tea in different ways. So I wondered, what do the different teas and colours represent to you, and also how do you take your tea?
Yeah, so basically the idea of that, man, is each song's kind of got a different feeling and a different color behind it. So I kind of connected it with the Definitely Tea. So each song's got a different feeling, a different emotion. And yeah, I wanted to make it a bit quirky. So that was that little idea, a little play on words with the whole album thing. But the way I take my tea, to be honest, I don't actually drink normal tea, mate. I like green teas and herbal teas.
Yeah.
So just boiling water with a nice herbal tea. That's me sorted for the day.
Yeah, awesome. I can imagine actually that'll probably go down well in America as well, just because it's the British cliche, isn't it, that we're a nation of tea drinkers.
Yeah, man. The reason for the name Definitely Tea was actually there's a bit of a joke between Oasis released Definitely Maybe in 1994. I was born in 1994 in the same month that Definitely Tea came out. So then when I was like thinking of the name to do it, because all my influences have been like Oasis, people like Dermot Kennedy, Ben Howard, all this. And Oasis have been a big input to my, you know, writing style and things like that. So I thought it'd be quite cool to just be like, call it Definitely Tea. And then people will look at that, and I was thinking they might be able to think, this is obviously in that Brit rock style, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's like a subtle little nod to it kind of thing, because I picked up on that as well, but I wasn't sure like whether it's deliberate or not, but it definitely like it does remind you of that. And so so that's pretty cool. Okay, well, I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned some of the stuff you've been doing with HMV, and you've played in store at HMV. What was it like to play in store? Like, because I imagine for you who do a lot of busking, was it kind of similar to busking, or did it feel more like a full gig to you? What was it like?
Yeah, it was cool, man. I did one in Uxbridge, and then I did one in High Wycombe back to back. Yeah, it was a bit weird. It was a different environment, but it was cool. It's like a lot of people, you know, they're shopping for their records and that, and then they're just all like, but they're all a bit confused. And I think it's cool to see. They're like, wow, this is cool, seeing live music inside H&B. So I really enjoyed it, to be fair, man. There was quite a good little footfall on the day that I went there, and yeah, a lot of people were, you know, taking pictures, videoing it, trying to like asking who I was. So it was a really positive thing to do, and seeing them, they're doing it all the time now, which is fantastic. I think it's a really good thing that they're doing, and it's, you know, it's kind of bringing back that old era of music, you know, like back in the day when you'd have that kind of in the record shops and that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and you mentioned Encircle, and I wondered like what's it been like to work with Encircle Publications?
I've enjoyed working with them very much. I mean, they have their foibles. You know, being a small publisher, they struggle for money and don't have much of a marketing or promotional campaign. But the pluses far outweigh it. You know, I'm able to have input onto my cover design. I'm able to brainstorm with marketing and promotional ideas with them, and different things like that. I have a lot of input into what gets produced of my work. And as well, I've met a, you know, fine cast of characters who are also Encircle published authors that has become like a family to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it does have that vibe. And I mean, so Encircle, they're published in or they're based in Maine, right? And your Maine is like obviously very important to your books. I wondered, how important is Maine as a location to your writing? Do you think it's almost a character in and of itself?
I think it is absolutely is a character. The setting does play a large role. Maine is a very unique place in the northeast of the United States, and our winters are very fierce and take action, you know, part over into some of my books and things like that. So that's been valuable, as well as the attitude of Mainers, which I think is sort of much more towards, you know, the attitude of England and Scotland than a lot of the rest of the United States of America. So I often think that Maine would fit in over there in the UK a little bit better, but absolutely, I think it plays a large part.
That was a highlight of our chat with author Matt Cost, and you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Maz Manzini with Little Bump.
I feel you moving, little bump. Are you grooving, little bump? 22 weeks high, your mama keeps you warm inside, little bump. Our own creation, little bump. Wonder who's your generation, little bump. Well, it will be alright. You got people on the angel side, little bump. or will you take after me? I guess we'll wait and see. Well, are you coming out now, little bump? Hear the birds singing, little bump. Well, it'll be just fine. Your dad is always gonna have time for you now, little bump. Days gone, little bump. 3 days gone, 4 days gone, little bump. 1 week gone, Old England gone, little bump. 9 days gone, 11 days gone, little bump. 13 days gone, 2 weeks gone.
Oh, Nancy.
Rise our windows to my soul. I've been shedding dreams like I'm shedding clothes. There is only darkness here. I played my hand and now I have to warn her. And all the faces that we wear, the painted masks hiding veiled despair. I wear her kisses like a suit of armor. Close your eyes, trust in what you feel inside. Follow me and dare to find the pattern of your smile. Lay me low, pick me up and make it so. The secret is just ours to know. Never will we walk a crooked mile. Now she's picking flowers in the rain for the ghost of heartache and the ghost of pain. Her tears like memories slowly fade, yet still they haunt her. And all the faces that we wear are cast aside when the soul's laid bare. A wrap around me like a suit of armor. Close your eyes, trust in what you feel inside. Follow me and dare to find the pattern of your smile. Lay me low, pick me up and make it so. The secret is just ours to know. Never will we walk a crooked mile. Close your eyes, trust in what you feel inside. Follow me and dare to find the pattern of your smile. Lay me low, pick me up and make it so. The secret is just ours to know. Never will we walk a crooked mile.
That was Walk a Crooked Mile by Steve Winch and The Inception, and before that we had a Little Bump by Maz Manzini. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for this week's album review.
The Best of Nick Lowe, bought from an Oxfam charity shop. If there was one man that brought music back down to earth in England in the mid-70s, it was Nick Lowe. He had played with pub rock pioneers Bringeley Schwartz, who were the first to record his classic song, What's So Funny About Peace, Love and Understanding. There are many versions of What's So Funny by many artists, but there is no definitive Nick Lowe version, so it is not on this album, though the Elvis Costello version was the B-side to one of Nick Lowe's singles. After Bringeley Schwartz, he put out some very back-to-basics singles on the newly launched Stiff Records, songs like So It Goes and Heart of the City. They were exciting tracks for exciting times, simple pop rock songs simply recorded and released on an independent label, famous for working on a shoestring. The change had begun, the dinosaurs' days were numbered. Some even went so far as going back to mono. It was the birth of indie. Nick Lowe produced the first and possibly best ever punk single, New Rose by the Damned. He produced Elvis Costello. He released a successful solo album and had a hit with the song I Loved the Sound of Breaking Glass. A song that is both quite adventurous, with its sharp cascading breaking glass piano and Nile Rodgers-esque disco chomping guitar, but also probably qualifies as a novelty record. His style is based around late 50s and early 60s guitar pop, making an art form of that which had been intended to be disposable and ephemeral. Think Del Shannon with Dwayne Eddy guitar solos. The song Half a Boy and Half a Man has some chirpy Sam the Sham organ, and Little Hitler has a Phil Spector wall of sound. He also likes to joke about with the lyrics. In the song Mary Provost, he sings about an actress who died alone in her flat with her dog. He sings, "She was a winner that became the doggy's dinner." There is another song called Time Wounds All Heals, and of course, You've Got to Be Cruel to Be Kind. He wrote some great no-nonsense rock and roll songs and teamed up with Dave Edmunds in a band they called Rockpile. He was the Jesus of cool, and he used to know the bride when she used to rock and roll. Nick Lowe, the best of.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared, all the guests that we interviewed. Thank you to AB Frank as well for his entry into the Rhylight Zone. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Archer on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again on iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And you can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to love you and leave you with one last tune, and this is Bert Honor with The Monster / An End. I'll catch you next week.
Is it alright if I play one more, mate?
Yeah, of course you can, mate. Looks like everyone is fucked off for the night.
Yeah, they're gone.
I enjoyed it tonight, by the way. You feeling okay?
Yeah, right.
You want another drink?
Yeah.
This one's on the out.
I want to forget, I drink to forgive, but my legs have grown tired and my liver can't live. The path has grown dark, but the end is in sight. Why can't I manage just one sober night? My reflection looks back on what I've become, a rapid decline since 2001. The past is the past, but my future looks grim. You're probably right, you're safer with him. Well, I could be the monster that lurks beneath your bed, and I could be the dealer who keeps your veins well fed. I could be the siren that lures you to the rocks. You could be my chicken, and I will be your fox. I could be the bandit who's holding up your heart, and I can be that you knew that from the start. Well, I could be the virus infecting from within. Where else would I begin?
Yeah, cheers, mate.
In the summer, walking in the sun, feeling good just to be young. In the winter, walking in the snow, tell me where did the good times go? In the autumn, the leaves are on the ground, just the time to feel down. In the springtime we watch the flowers grow. Tell me where did the good times go? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did the good times go? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did the good times go? They say school days are the best days of your life. Why they say that I'll never know. In the teenage years the kids are alright, but tell me where did the good times go? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did the good times go? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did they go, sha-la-la-la? Where did the good times go? Now we see the world has changed and we miss the lives we left behind. And the good times are worth so much more. Now they are so hard to find. So hard to find, sha-la-la-la. So hard to find, sha-la-la-la. Now they are so hard to find. And the good times are worth so much more. Now they are so hard